Good evening and welcome back to a joint meeting of the Burbank City Council and the Housing Authority on Tuesday, January 14th, 2025. Today's study session item is a review of the City Park Master Plan. I now welcome Mr. Diego Ceballos, Assistant Director in the Park, Recreation and Community Services Department, to begin the presentation. Hi, welcome.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor Perez, council members. Again, Diego Ceballos, Assistant Director of Parks, Recreation, and Community Services. It is my pleasure to present this evening the City Parks Master Plan. In 2022, the department completed a 12-month community engagement process that led to the development of the George Isay Master Plan, which then led to the approval of the redevelopment of the Olive Recreation Center and the Burbank Little Theater. Leveraging on this momentum and the success of the City Council adopted George Isay Park Master Plan, the department initiated a 15-month process to develop the City Parks Master Plan. It is my pleasure to welcome Zachary Muting from RJM Design Group to present the Master Plan framework that includes an inventory of existing conditions, extensive community engagement, and a needs assessment and key recommendations. Without any further ado, I'd like to welcome Zachary.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be invited back here to present the findings of what was a more than a year's worth effort of research and investigations and community outreach. A lot of dialogue had happened, so I'm going to try and condense a year's worth of effort into a short presentation here, but a meaningful one. The role of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan is meant to be that tool, the implementation guide for the future of Parks and Recreation here. In order to develop the master plan, what we did is we broke it down into several sections, going first through an inventory of the existing conditions, looking at an extensive community engagement outreach, listening to as much of the community as possible, and you'll see that as we go through this presentation here. And then balancing what we've seen, what you have, that inventory versus what the community wants. Balancing those scales into a needs analysis, ultimately developing the recommendations, and then looking at funding and implementation strategies. As I mentioned, that first part there is we look at what you have. We go through a lot of mapping analysis as part of this process, and we look at all of the existing facilities, where they are, where they're geographically located across the community. Are they next to residential elements? Are they next to trails? We go through an extensive analysis so we can understand what you have. Then we also go through the inventory of all of the facilities, where the facilities are, where they're located, what they are, and again, the surrounding influences of those facilities themselves. With that information, we start to get a lay of the land. We also go through and we look at the demographic makeup of the community. Utilizing tapestry data sets from Esri, we can start to get an understanding of how large is the population here. In 2023, it was just over 100,000 people. Then we look at the demographic makeup. We see that 19% of that population was under 19 years of age. 24% of that population was from 19 to 34. 42, the largest segment of that population, was from 35 to 64, and then 15% is 65 and older. This is just a snapshot. This isn't the end-all, be-all. We don't make planning decisions just based on this. This just gives me a little bit of information of what might we see as we go into it. What might we see in terms of programs that people talk about? How might we reach out to the community? And reaching out to the community, I will say, and I'm going to highlight a couple things as we go through, particularly Workshop 3, when we get down to that one, an extensive community engagement process. As I mentioned, the foundation of this document is really, what does the community want? How are they recreating now? They are the consumers of the community recreation here. How do we work with them in order to service what they're looking for? So we go through, we have an extensive website process where we collect feedback submittals, we collect how many views we have. We did stakeholder interviews, focus groups, online surveys, in-person workshop surveys, as well as multimodal surveys. Pretty much any way I can communicate with the community we did as we went through this. And you can see a number of responses here. Overall, we had more than 3,000 direct responses from participants, which translated, when we look at all of our mapping analysis, where the comments are coming from, we actually had over 8,700 data points that we analyzed as part of this process. Now, I mentioned the demographics. Well, I also look at the geographics. Where are people? Which is kind of a common sense item there, but I want to know where are people and where are the parks. More so, we overlay where did we hear what. So you see the maps in front of you. These are the responses locations that we got from the community. So when I go through our database and I say, okay, how many people wanted trails and where did they ask for those trails? I can now surgically find some of those recommendations based on this mapping analysis. More so, you can see as we look at these, it's all across the community. So we have a good distribution. When we did the multimodal survey, we had a great distribution. Workshop 1, 2, 3, even the feedback responses were from members all across the community. So I know I'm getting a good geographic distribution of participants all across the community, not just in one area. What I'd like to do to focus on some of these elements here, as I mentioned before, the cornerstone of this report really is the community responses and that dialogue we had. So I want to share some of those top level responses from each of those outreach elements. And as we go through these, you're going to hear a lot of repeats. That's not because it came from one element and just bled over to the page to the next one. They came up individually through each one of these outreach efforts. Those are what I call common threads. Those common threads start to create that tapestry or fabric of what those high level prioritized community needs are. So starting with the stakeholder interviews, on March 15th to April 12th, 2024, we had one-on-one interviews as well as staff focus groups. And we heard elements such as program needs and facility needs, highlighting some of those top things that we had heard out of those stakeholder interviews included sports and arts for youth, environmental initiatives, educational programs, aquatic programs, and nature education. In terms of facility needs that we heard from them were pickleball courts, performing arts center, splash pads, theater, and park restrooms. As we went through and we continued into the city and staff focus groups, we had 8 focus groups of this, totaling 48 participants, asking again several questions, but 2 specific ones. What are some of the program needs and what are some of the facility needs? And we heard from those responses, program needs, teen programs, safety programs, more concerts, and senior services. In terms of facilities, we heard lighting in parks, parking, teen center, a dog park, indoor pool or spa, pickleball courts, soccer fields, Starlight Bowl renovation, and volleyball courts, particularly outdoors. Another element that we utilized in order to reach out to the community was a statistically valid multimodal survey. This survey was conducted in multiple languages and it was done over 400 households. So that way, when I say a multimodal survey, it's not just the telephone anymore. It's telephone, cell phone, texting, email, any way they can collect the information. And the surveys are done in a statistical manner to where we can safely say, based on our sample size, these are valid for the entire community. Some of the questions that we asked across the survey included, where do people get their information from? This is a key component because how am I going to reach out to the largest percentage of your community? Or if you continue programmed advertisements, where is the best spot to advertise for your market audience? And we see that 86% get their information about Burbank Parks and Recreation Facilities from the city's website, internet, or social media. It's a pretty tech-savvy population out there, which means SEO, search engine optimization, making sure we're putting stuff on those front pages, that all that information is funneled in for programming and advertisements are in this because you're going to capture the bulk of your participants. We also asked 2 similar questions coming up, which are how satisfied the participants are with what the city's doing in maintaining the parks and recreation facilities. And that we found 81% of the participants said they were satisfied with the job the city's doing. Now to put that in context, that is a high number. Over the last 9 park and recreation master plans I've conducted, that number ranged anywhere from 45% to 91%. That averaged out to 75. You guys are at 81 here. That is a very high number and something to be proud of. 75% of the participants said they are satisfied with the existing parks, recreation facilities, and programs that they're utilizing here in Burbank. Again, looking across the past 9 park and recreation master plans I've done, that number ranged anywhere from 40 to 78%. You're almost at the highest. That average there was 67%. You're very much above average in there in terms of satisfaction with the parks, facilities, and programs. Continuing on that multimodal survey, we asked several questions, but 2 key ones that we're going to look at out of each one of these outreach modes is what is one program, class, or activity you would like to see added or improved in the city? And we heard, in order here, swimming classes, yoga, meditation classes, children's activities, pickleball, art classes, senior activities, fitness, exercise, Zumba, basketball. In terms of what is one park facility, amenity, or recreation facility you would like to see added or improved in the city, we heard swimming pools, playground updates, preserve green grass tree areas, restrooms, walking paths, trails, soccer field, dog park, tennis courts, pickleball, and more parks. Already we're starting to hear some of those common threads, some of those common elements we've heard pop up already in some of those outreach modes. Workshop 1 was conducted on March 13th, 2024 from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Jocelyn Adult Center. How we conducted our public workshops were we went out to the community in person. We shared information, everything we'd collected, part of which you've seen here tonight, with the community, and then we asked them questions. Similar questions also included what programs and facilities you would like to see. What role can the city play in addressing some of the issues you have here with the community in terms of parks and recreation? What are the elements of the community characteristics that you love to work and play here in the city? Overall, we had 459 completed surveys as part of this process. Now, we didn't have all 459 in the room at one time. That would have been a true, tremendous achievement. I think we probably would have a problem with the capacity, though. I don't think the fire marshal would have let us do that. But we had a large group that night, and then what we do is after that workshop, we launched the same presentation I do on YouTube, on a video, so that everybody can access that for the next several weeks. And then people who couldn't make it in person can take that same survey online and be part of the process. And that total came to 459. And let me share with you some of those results. The first question we summarized here was, what are the most important community characteristics that make the city a great place to live, work, and play? And what we heard was the small town feel, the community, family-friendly activities and the education, safety and cleanliness, parks and recreation, accessibility, and the amenities themselves. We also asked, what are issues that might be negatively impacting some of those community characteristics? And we heard parks and green spaces, meaning needing more. Traffic and pedestrian elements, safety elements, homelessness and housing affordability, recreation facilities and programs, meaning needing more, community services, and accessibility to them. Then we asked, what role can the city of Burbank play in addressing some of these issues? And we heard improving maintenance, improving the safety and cleanliness, community engagement and feedback, having more of that, recreation and facility and park expansions, again, goes in line with some of the more parks, program diversity and accessibility, as well as environmental conservation and green spaces. Again, similar trends of what we've heard already through this process. Workshop 2 was conducted in the same manner, where we had an in-person presentation one night. We shared information with the community, then we heard back from them, and then it went on YouTube the next day and was live for 2 weeks for people to watch the video and weigh in with the same survey. That was conducted on April 10th, 2024, from 6 to 8 at the Mary Alvarado Recreation Center. As part of this survey, we received 383 completed surveys. Some of those questions we asked, you'll see, are similar here. So what is one park feature, amenity, or recreation facility you would most like to see added in the city of Burbank? And we heard soccer fields, pickleball courts, swimming pool upgrades, dog park, playground improvements, all things we've heard already as we go through this. And we continue to ask these questions as a community. So as we hear this information, we share it back with the community. It's a dialogue. It's a give and take. So we're constantly checking in with the community as we go through this process. What is one recreation program, class, or activity you would like most like to see added or expanded in the city of Burbank? I heard youth sports, youth programs, health and wellness, education activities, and community development and engagement. The next workshop, workshop number 3, conducted in the same manner, was done on May 8th, 2024, from 6 to 8 at the McCambridge Recreation Center. I will say, working with staff, they don't like to be second to anyone, not even themselves. When we did the Georgia Zay outreach, we had 841 responses for a single outreach event. Well, in line with that trend, they wanted to break that record. And we received, as part of this one workshop event, 1,146 responses, completely destroying that original goal, and now you continue to maintain that goal. I don't think that one's going to be broken anytime soon, but you certainly set the bar high. Summaries from those responses We shared everything at that workshop, and we asked the community to list the top 5 programs, classes, or activities you would most like to see added in Burbank. Now, this list has more than 5. We continue to record data as it comes in, so everything gets filtered into it. And this is what we see. Those top elements that were listed by the community were soccer programs, after-school programs, children's activities, youth sports, affordable classes, arts and crafts classes, swimming classes, cultural events, gardening classes, and improve reservation systems for sports and facilities. In terms of the top 5 recreation features or recreation facility improvements, we heard elements such as soccer fields, restrooms, more parks and green areas, walking paths and trails, playground improvements, ball field improvements, bikes, trails, splash pad, park maintenance, and a dog park. Now, those common threads come up over and over and over. And one of the last things we had, tools that we used during this outreach process, was a feedback button on the website, which was available 24/7 and still today available. And this feedback button even now is open. We always had a spot for the community to come in and weigh in and say, you know what, I forgot something, I want to add this. So even up to right now tonight, they can still provide feedback. And I have a QR code at the end of the slide, end of the presentation here, as we asked what the community wanted. Open-ended, they can write anything in there. Things that we heard from that feedback included program needs such as arts and culture, youth sports, and maintenance. The park facility needs we heard, very similar: soccer fields, playgrounds, pickleball courts, restrooms, bike paths, parking, trees, splash pad and water features, walking trails, shade, general park improvements, a dog park, as well as accessibility. What we do to analyze and put everything together is we go through a series of mapping analysis, as I showed you some earlier, and we start to aggregate everything together and look at it from a quantitative analysis as well as a qualitative analysis. And we put everything together in these charts to say, okay, what would we see a prioritization based on the community responses be from? How often did we hear it, and how many of those outreach events? And this is where we come to this chart to show the prioritization of elements. If we were to spend city money improving specific programs, where would we get the most bang for our buck? Meaning, what did we hear the most often in most different modes? And that way we hear frequent, something that came in all of our outreach modes was arts and cultural programs, more senior programs and activities, swimming class and competitive swim. We also heard other elements that only came up in 2 modes, which is day camp classes and youth sports. When we put everything together for the facility needs, same process. How many times did things come up? How often did it come up? Some of those prioritizations that we heard from the community included add more parks and green spaces, dog park, pickleball courts, restrooms, soccer fields, sustainable park management, swimming pool improvements, walking trails, as well as the apparent items that only came up in 2 of those outreach modes included accessible playgrounds and facilities for those with disabilities, bike trails, park maintenance, parking and transportation, a performance venue, playground improvements, and a splash pad. Now, as I mentioned, we do a lot of mapping analysis. So when collected with all of that community data, we start to go back and we look at all the analysis that we can on our GIS systems. One of the tools that we utilize is a gap analysis. We look at how much park acreage you have. You have, from our analysis, 6.95 acres per 1,000 residents. We see that 92% of residents live within a 5, 10, or 15-minute walking radius to a park. That's kind of an academic planning standard, is that radius. That's just done in the system with architectural barriers, crossing roads, freeways that might be barriers. How does that compare? Then we put all those together. We look at that standard radius. We'll look at community data sets, the middle picture there. Where did we hear what element? Was it trails? Was it soccer? Was it splash pads? But then we'll also go through and we'll look at the utilization. That last chart there, we see this is just the average distance for all parks. This is based on anonymized cellular data. We can tell where people are driving from to go to your parks. That's just common practice now. This starts to surpass that 5, 10, 15-minute walking radius. Yes, the parks are there for people, but what does it actually show? It shows me that you have a sphere of influence that is much larger than the city boundaries. People don't look at the city line of, oh, this is Burbank Parks and this is somebody else's parks. No, they go to where they want to go. They want to go to George's A Park or Train Park. My kids identify parks based on the play equipment. So for all the children listening, Train Park. So that's where they want to go. They don't see the property lines. They go where they want to. So your sphere of influence is much, much larger than what just the academic version would be as we go through this. That's very important. how, yeah, there we go. Yes, big legit. Yeah. As we go through, we do all that analysis and explain it in the report. When we come to the conclusion, we want to make sure that we provide a roadmap for the future. So we developed key strategies on how we can start to tackle some of these elements, how we can utilize that prioritization list, the facility improvements that we saw, the inventory, all of the analysis that we've done, put together into 6 key strategies. And I want to just briefly go through them here. The first one is develop a multi-use sports complex that maximizes space efficiency, providing flexible scheduling and promote inclusive programming for all age groups. This can be achieved through 3 goals: prioritizing the development of soccer fields to meet the needs. Right now, all of the soccer fields are currently being utilized on school property. If that agreement were to change, you would find yourself in a significant deficit situation with soccer facilities, making sure we balance that. Pickleball courts, developing more pickleball courts, but when we do it in a mindset to where we're putting 4 and 8 groupings together. So that way we can promote round robin play, tournament play, as well as group lessons and free play. And then youth sports, expanding youth sport offerings, particularly in some of the high demand areas that are identified, such as baseball, volleyball, and soccer. The second key strategy would be to implement aquatic center improvements with diverse water features, swim programs, and spaces for both competitive athletes and casual swimmers. This will be achieved through 2 goals. The first one, swimming pool improvements, classes in competitive swim, collaborating with local providers to address participation barriers, capacity, and explore expanded use of the McCambridge pool. Splash pad, adding small low-cost water features that would enhance playgrounds with more of a mist level spray, something you would see at large shopping centers, that when it's turned off, it's not an empty swimming pool, it's not an empty fountain, it's just a normal in-ground feature, something that has low impact but high level of fun in play. So that way we can start to meet that splash pad element, because you do have a successful splash pad. This is more in line with other park areas in a smaller, low-cost level environment. Key strategy number 3 would be adopt a comprehensive park enhancement plan that prioritizes eco-friendly practices, modernizes amenities, and ensures inclusive access for all community members, including those with disabilities. We have 6 goals with this. Everything from improving park maintenance. Now, I know park maintenance was high satisfaction on the list, going back to that previous slide. But looking at it in terms of a CMMS system, a software scheduling system, to where we can program some of those maintenance and activities, looking at continued planned improvements as things come down the line. Everything from, such as goal 3, restrooms. Restrooms after a high program event often need to be cleaned right away, making sure those schedules program follow each other. As you have a large event, those cleaning systems naturally happen. Sustainable park management. Promoting urban forest master plans, looking at conservation elements, life cycle management for tree care, playground improvements, continuing playground renovation schedules that you have, but looking at universal design standards. We also have this as goal 3.5, is accessible playgrounds and facilities for those with disabilities. And we're not talking about just ADA. We're talking about moms and dads, grandma and grandpa, who might have disabilities as well too, to get in and around to play with their grandchildren or their children. And then lastly, a dog park, prioritizing the continued development of the Dick Clark Dog Park. Goal 4 is create an interconnected greenways with walking loops that link parks and trails to accessible transit options and parking, promoting sustainable mobility and outdoor recreation. This is achieved through 4 goals: adding more parks and green spaces. This is done through collaborative partnerships, public-private partnerships, looking at urban spaces and repurposing land. This is not going to happen overnight. This is one of those long-term goals where you look at all the developments as you go forward into the future. Adding walking paths and trails, enhance park accessibility to promote well living through a defined trail system. This also includes inner park loops, not just connected park loops, but inner park loops for smaller tracks. Bike trails, improving the communication on all trail access areas, gather community feedback, and continue the advancement of the Burbank Complete Streets Plan to boost bike and pedestrian mobility. Lastly, there, parking and transportation, enhance pedestrian parking safety by adding traffic calming measures, improving the parking flow, ensuring adequate parking for all transportation areas and parking events. Key strategy 5 is create a versatile cultural hub that offers adaptable spaces for performances, exhibitions, and community-driven programs fostering creative expression and cultural engagement. This is done through two goals here: performance venue, strengthening partnerships with local nonprofits, enhancing facilities like the Burbank Little Theater or the Starlight Bowl, providing a diverse cultural platform for different sizes of events, as well as arts and cultural programs, expanding access to arts through different cultural programs and offerings. Key strategy 6, the last one here, is expand diverse programming that provides tailored activities for both seniors and youth, encouraging active engagement and community growth. Looking at goal 6.1 there, goal 6 is supported by more senior programs and activities, fostering community and well-being through expanded social clubs, fitness options, creative arts programs for seniors, as well as goal 6.2, day camp, flexible day camp programs, options for working parents through full day, half day, and through school partnerships is another successful element in starting to offer those day camp facilities for working parents. I know I kind of ran through a lot of that very quickly, but when it comes down to the brass tacks, as we go through detailed elements in our reports, we see that there's $45 million in planned CIP park and recreation facility improvements now. That's based off the 24-25 fiscal year. There's also $154 million in new master plan park and facility recommendations. That's if I go through all of those goals and elements and the specific things we've said, which would be for the next 5, 10, 15 years in the future. If you were to do it all today, this is where we're looking at in terms of a snapshot of that price tag. Now that's everything everywhere right now. That's not going to happen. That's why we have that prioritized list. So you can see if we're to spend some of our hard-earned money, where are we going to spend it and get the maximum return on it? Lastly, when we do look at the success of this Park and Recreation Master Plan, it will be built on that community dialogue you've already started, that you've had, the success you have in going out to your community, continuing that dialogue, the ebb and flow, so that as you go through this, those parks and recreation, those facilities are your front door. That is the front line of what the community sees, and that's how that dialogue will continue to flourish here in terms of recreation. I want to circle back to that feedback comment. That's the QR code that will go to the website. You can see there, burbankca.gov/City Parks Master Plan. That will take you to the website, still live. And the feedback comment button is still live. People can leave comments tonight if they want. That's just continuing to ensure we've always had an ear to the community, even up until this presentation. Thank you very much. I hope I didn't go too long. I really appreciate it. This is exciting for me to share all this information because it has so much community value in here. I've heard a lot of voices through this process, and you truly have a great community, one that is excited and loves the outdoor recreation system you've built here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the presentation. We appreciate it very much. And now to my colleagues, if we have questions, we'll start with those, and then if there's any feedback, we'll go there. And then, as a reminder, we won't be doing anything further because this is an actual item to vote on later in the agenda for our public meeting. Right, so questions. Councilmember Mullins.
Okay, well, great presentation. Also, a lot of good information, and I do applaud staff for having 81% approval in the community. That's extremely very high, and it's very important for us to get that feedback to know, are we doing our jobs and how are we doing it? And I know it's never going to be 100% because there's always room for improvement, but we're on a good start at least. I have some questions regarding programs and then also questions in regards to the budget. And I think the question in regards to the budget, because looking at 154.7 million for overall master plan and then the carve out of 45 million. I think for staff, I want to know what are we going to be doing to make sure that these programs are integrated in our budget as we discuss our budget yearly. How are we going to be looking at integration of implementation of some of these wish lists, if you will, that the community had asked us to look at?
Thank you for the question. Again, Diego Ceballos, Assistant Director of Park and Recreation. The master plan provides us a framework of how we do make decisions on a going forward basis. So every year through the capital improvement project, we will prioritize how we request those projects and what projects we request based on our program needs. The city manager has directed staff to complete 3 core projects that have been identified by this master plan as a strong need in the community, and that's the George Isaiah Park Master Plan development. That includes the rec center and the Little Theater, redeveloping the Little Theater, and plans are underway. We're also prioritizing the McCambridge Pool redevelopment that we received $1.5 million in grant funds, again, because we have master plans, planning, community engagement. It strategically puts us in really great footing to go out and request those funds. And then lastly, the Starlight Bowl. Those are 3 main projects that we're looking to move forward.
And we want to get that dog park done. That's the fourth.
I was going to say, it's been only, 10 years I've been hearing about it. So yeah, the dog park is one of the
That's
important
right.
ones. And so in carving out for CIP, those are the 3 identifiable now projects that we're looking at to perhaps, we're going to have a discussion, and those are 3 very important ones. I know, like the Starlight Bowl is something, I would love to see us doing more in upgrading that and performance. And the pool, of course, they're all very important. So I'm definitely looking forward to have those discussions during our budget, but ongoing. So, and maybe the question is to the city manager, with all these lists, with this list that we have, are we going to be looking at it every budget year? Are we going to pick some programs from there, and we're going to talk about them? We're going to see maybe you can incorporate them in our budget?
Absolutely. I mean, you have a lot already in the hopper. I think 54 million. We just started. We already have money with the design of the McCambridge pool. So, things are happening. This allows us to prioritize and appropriate the monies each year based on priority, but also make sure that we have a working list that you could see, and that we have the resources to be able to finish each of these projects. So yeah, this is like Diego said, this is a great framework for us over the next 20 years to really redo all of our parks, both capital as well as enhance our programs.
Thank you. As far as the, and I think it was on one of the slides, is the 5% said preserve our grass area, meaning we want more green, right? Can we, in our discussion with some of the development that will take place in the city, can we also take a look at maybe working with the developers to provide green space, green area that would be actually part of our master plan, that would say we have a goal to increase our green area, and if working with them for a possibility of allocating a certain area in that location, wherever they're developing, as long as it's not like an SB 35 project.
You said it right on. So if it's a negotiated plan development, DA type of situation, we've been very successful, as you know, on First Street and Front Street, getting some parkland that will be inevitably built. So yeah, so we definitely look at opportunities to do public benefit opportunities at some of these development sites where possible.
Okay, so this will be something on our agenda and focus in trying, because I don't know how much expansion can we do and find empty land to put a new park in on that land, but I think we can take advantage of some of the development and provide that green space in the areas, whether it's even a playground or water features. I mean, I love water features, so if we can incorporate some of that in the development area, even for our library, for the civic library plan that we're looking at, I think that's important that we can incorporate some of maybe water feature or green space. So that would be great. Also, the last question I have in regards to programming for senior programs, youth programs, what it would be the cost, because I think everything is lumped together as 154 million, or I don't have like a breakdown of enhancing our senior programs, and that it cannot be done sooner than later, can we enhance our youth programs now? And what would that cost be?
So I don't have a dollar figure for that lump sum amount for augmenting programs, but what this does do, it clearly identifies where our gaps are. We talk about childcare, right? What can we do to expand childcare? So during the budget process, we say, okay, well, if we need to augment childcare through a camp program at at one of our centers, we'll bring that back through the budget process and request those dollars to enhance that, and we'll do the justification based on our master plan and our needs analysis that have been clearly shown that there's a gap in those services. So I don't have an answer to the question of how much does it cost to continue to add these programs, but staff will be coming back during the budget process and requesting those additional dollars for programs that are needed.
Okay, thank you. As long as it's a live document that we're going to
That's
be
correct.
seeing some chunks of it coming to us during the budget discussion or even mid-year, however it is that we need. I know we can't get it all done. 154 is a lot, but as long as we're actively seeking some of these programs to make them happen. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Councilor Anthony?
What is a splash pad?
If I were to ask that of 10 different people, I get 10 different answers.
Well, let me ask you this. Universal Studios in the Minions Park area, they have like this squishy ground facility that kids can climb on that has water dripping everywhere. There's no pool. There's no standing water. It all drains. But they run around barefoot in their bathing trunks and they get wet and they climb on stuff.
Yes.
Is that a splash pad?
Yes, I would
Okay.
count that as a splash pad. There are large, small, they come in all different shapes and sizes. The element is the water, that tactile sensation, even if it's a mister. As a child, it's that fun running through a plane and moms and dads going,
If I
oh,
take
really?
my shoes off
I'm
and I
gonna
can
take my
splash, the
shoes off, I'm
feet
gonna-
splash in the water.
Yeah,
Okay.
puddle and that's it. But when we talk about it though, we also want to look at it in terms of the design sense of cost saving. When it's down for maintenance or it's off for seasonality, it doesn't look like an empty pool. It doesn't look like something broken.
You can still climb on
You
it.
can still climb on it. You can still play on it. That's the balance there.
Okay. Great.
That was your question?
That was it. I was very excited. You said splash pad. I got excited.
Great. Well, moving on, Councilor Rosati.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Piqued my interest on the workshop number 1 summary, Q2, housing affordability. What are the thoughts there? Has there been any brainstorming on how to meet that demand?
So again, Park and Recreation, what we wanted to do is we wanted to make it open-ended. Tell us what's your concern. What are the kind of the key characteristics of our neighborhoods that make Burbank special, and what are the challenges? And that's just a question that came up. Is there any tangible piece that Park and Rec can kind of impact? That's a very difficult question for us to answer. But what we wanted to do is capture it because it did come up during our outreach presentations. And so what we gain from that is if there's affordability issues, we have the PASS program, and how much more robust does that program have to be when it comes to childcare? Kind of what are those barriers that parents are seeing that to participation, and how can we reduce those barriers? So we look at that question, answering that question through that framework.
Has there been any thought about leveraging, like the Jocelyn Center? You could tear that down, build senior housing, and then on the bottom floor, state-of-the-art new Jocelyn Center. We own the property, give the property to the developer, give them a 30-year lease, we own the land. Has there been any thought to kind of looking at leveraging some of these properties where we could do both? We can have the rec center and senior housing.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment. We'll make note of it. There hasn't been a discussion. Zachary, if you can go back to all of your master planning and all the work that you do with different communities, have you seen that model been implemented?
We have not seen that model implemented, but I would only add the caveat of never sell parkland.
I didn't say sell the park.
I know. I'm just adding that piece in there. Never lose your capacity. Whatever you do, whatever your developments are, always try and maintain, if not grow, because as you will continue to build, we'll find different development standards. We'll find different housing opportunities. I've seen a lot of creative things, especially in the last few months, of people coming in. I have not seen that model specifically in any park system yet. Doesn't mean the idea has not been brought up or is not being kicked around somewhere else right now. I always, anytime I hear something about developing, I always try and say, keep your capacity, always preserve your capacity, if not grow it. But I have not heard that
Yeah,
specific
because
model.
you could literally take the same footprint and create much-needed senior housing, and again, at the bottom level, right at their doorstep, they would have a state-of-the-art center, that's all.
I appreciate it. I appreciate the comment.
Did you have a follow-up, Councilor Anthony?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. Based off of that, when I was looking through this, it looked mostly as though we were looking at how to manage the green space and what programs to offer. I didn't see much in utilizing our facilities or even developing our facilities. So to Councilmember Rosati's point, I feel like that is a missing component of this master plan. And again, that's long-term planning, but we do have a lot of facilities and, looking at the libraries and other stuff, they're kind of old. So if we could start to incorporate, hey, what can we build rather than just, because there's a lot of green space to build on, yes, for fields and programming. But at the same time, yeah, most of this stuff is single story. Some of them are two-story construction. That's old thinking, and yeah, I agree. I think there's some planning that we could do.
Okay, Councilor Mullins, another follow-up?
Yes, excellent points. And I think perhaps the question might not been asked of the community when you were getting the feedback or the survey. I think maybe if we would have posed the question, would you like to see senior housing, in lieu of having just that one level of Jocelyn Center, would you like to see additional housing and having a center below? I think that might have been a different answer. So I think what's missing is the actual, was it even discussed, was the question there.
Yeah. I'd just like to kind of bring us back to the George Isaiah Park Master Plan, right? The George Isaiah Park Master Plan took all of the community's input, right? Open-ended questions, an open dialogue, a list of things. What would you like to see? We did the same approach here. That question that comment didn't come up, but the open-ended kind of dialogue was there. Then what we do as professionals, we take these master plans and then we do our next iteration, right? So the next iteration, as it was with the George Isaiah Park Master Plan, is now we need a two-story rec center with administrative offices, a walking track, a little theater, right? That's now the Burbank Performing Arts Theater that will fulfill all of our needs as we dive a little deeper. So this is not, as you mentioned earlier, Councilmember Mullins, this is not the final document. This is a growing, living document that will have multiple iterations as we continue to engage the community.
Thank you, Councilor Mullins. And I will say I would agree with that. I was thinking in the same line of questioning. I would love to hear what the public thinks, especially those who are park users, when we pose the question, would you like to see some type of housing here? I'd be really interested in knowing what the folks who utilize our parks think, because I know there's mixed feelings about that in the community. It'd be really interesting to see what those who are utilizing the facilities, who are utilizing the Jocelyn Center think. So something to think about for future iterations.
Thank you.
Councilmember Takahashi.
That went a direction I did not expect, so that was an interesting conversation. Thank you. So this has been an excellent presentation, and I'm super excited because I was at the first workshop. And I remember at the Jocelyn Center, speaking of. I was there and then saw you doing the first workshop. Very enthusiastic, by the way.
Thank you.
And to see the end result of all the work that you've put in is really neat to see, kind of beginning through the end. So I have a few questions for you both. I'm not sure who to direct them to. So for the 6 key strategies and just kind of the presentation in general, but I'm really interested in the strategies, have this concept been presented to other bodies, like, for example, Park and Rec Board, Cultural Arts Commission, Athletic Foundation, Transportation for the thoughts about the biking and walking? Are there any other groups that have seen this 60 key strategies?
So first, we had several stakeholder interviews, and the list of groups that you mentioned were part of those focus groups, those stakeholder interviews. We went back to our park board and presented and got approval to continue forward. I'm sorry. We asked them for additional feedback, and we did a full presentation there. After this council presentation, we will continue to do the engagement, and we'll go to BAF, we'll go to the Burbank Athletic Federation Board, the Cultural Arts Commission, and we will share with them our key findings.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. About key strategy number 1, I'm looking at pickleball courts. And as you probably know, it's really popular right now, pickleball, right? But 5-6 years ago, I'd never even heard of pickleball. So my question for you is this. It's hard to predict what new sport or interest is going to be the next thing, right? So as part of key strategy number 1, what is there a part of it that kind of allows for the flexibility to bring in a new sport that was potentially unexpected? One of the challenges, as you know, Diego, is that with pickleball is that we had a hard time finding space for it. And then the place that we were thinking about having space was tennis, and so there was that whole kind of thing. And I'm just wondering, as we're looking forward and developing new sports areas, are we ready for something new to pop up and be able to implement that pretty quickly?
Let me just start with the pickleball first.
Okay.
So with pickleball, we've been really lucky in Burbank that we don't have much of the pickleball conflict with our tennis players because we've been able to grow responsibly, right? So we do mixed use, we do a lot of engagement. Before we change a schedule from tennis to pickleball, we have the dialogue with the tennis players and the pickleball players and so on. And so we've been able to balance both needs. I think part of what we need to do with pickleball is make sure that the community is not going to be impacted by the noise and the traffic, that we find the right venue for it, and that we address all the parking concerns and so on. So we're going to continue moving through working with our ambassadors, having those deep conversations with the community before we implement or change facilities or add new facilities.
Okay.
So everything has to be done in a measured, thoughtful way.
Okay. And then when something new that we can't predict comes along, is part of the strategic plan, is that part of it to be ready for potential new sports to be flexible?
So we're so lucky that we have a sports office that just manages this type of thing, right? And so we start with a small pilot program. We remind them that we have to grow responsibly, and that we take a measured approach as we introduce new programs.
Great.
If I could, I think a great example is our adaptive sports program. So we got money for that, and that's really now taking off. Like we're kind of the lead around the region with that. So and we never really kind of considered that a few years ago. So that's just an example of how they're nimble and can adapt.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Just a couple more questions, Madam Mayor.
Diego's ready for the Soul Cycle craze.
Oh, there we go. That's the next one. All right. And then speaking of splash pads, so when my kids were small, and we used the splash pads that were available around the valley and enjoyed them very much. And to your point about them being usable or potentially having an alternative use when there's no water, one thing that I did notice a couple places, and I can't recall exactly where they were, and I'm sorry, a couple places, their water splash pad wasn't a play area. It was almost like an art piece. Like it was part of the general outdoor space, and it happened to have water come up, and it was different colors and stuff. And so I'm wondering if there's a way to not only have like playground splash pads for kids, but even like water elements in art pieces that when it's not being used, it's just a walkable space, but when it's being used, it's a beautiful art piece and the kids can run through it and the adults can run through it or whatever.
And that's great feedback. We're going to put that as a comment from council and update our records with that. Thank you.
Great, awesome. And then my last one is I'm so excited about the idea of increasing our walking paths, trails, and bike paths. And as you're talking, and also I saw the map with all the parks and stuff, I'm thinking, our community loves to walk outside. We are a walking community. But one of the things I noticed is that a lot of our walking is around residential neighborhoods, which is not bad, right? But wouldn't it be awesome to be able to say, I'm going to go on this walking path that goes through this neighborhood and that neighborhood and kind of just have places to walk? I mean, obviously Chandler is an example of that, where it is a clear space to go walking and it gets used extensively. But next to near my house, there's also Whitnall, the Whitnall Park figure. And we do get folks walking there, but you have to get there. It's like you have to go there to then walk in a circle, which is fine, but it's not quite that inviting kind of, I'm going to go for a walk through the neighborhoods like Chandler is. So as we're moving forward with the concept of walking paths and trails and bikes, to think too of not just the connectivity between parks, but just like people in our community already enjoying being outside and walking around, and then using these connective trails between things that could go through private properties if they're willing to have that open for us, or could go through neighborhoods. So it's not just walking in a circle around the block, which is not bad, but I think it could be even more inviting if it were also like kind of trails. So those are my comments. I guess it wasn't really a question, it was more a comment. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Those are my comments and questions, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Takahashi, and it's a great segue for me because I was going to go start there. So looking at goal 4.2, have we actually identified any locations for walking paths or trails? Do you have any thoughts or ideas? Because I reading the report, I can see how conceptually we're thinking this is a great idea. Have we done further thinking, or am I getting ahead of myself?
We're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but I appreciate that. But when we're redesigning the George Isaiah Park, we're designing that to be a lot more walkable, right? The level surfaces, the ADA paths, the transitions. And so we're going to continue down that path. But when there's opportunities to continue to improve in our trails, making our trails more accessible, and really excited to Leadership Burbank just announced that they're going to be supporting adaptive sports in Burbank, and one of the things that we've asked for them is adaptive trail equipment, so somebody can jump on a piece of equipment and traverse the trail. So those are the concepts and the ideas that we're thinking. We're thinking of it from kind of a microcosm of a program participant, and then we're also looking at ways to interconnect our trails.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That was my selfish question as a runner. And just to Councilmember Takahashi's point, I also think it'd be great to bring that piece to our Transportation Commission. I know it feels like, how does this fit? But really, when we're talking about building even walking infrastructure, it'd be great to get their feedback on it. Also, it'd be great to connect with sustainability. Again, more folks who have experience in one of the areas that was expressed as a need. And then the other folks I would suggest talking to, especially on the walking trail thing. I know we have Feet Fleet and other running stores that really gather these groups of walkers, runners, and other folks, and they may have ideas about the safety, mobility issues across the neighborhood. So just some thoughts there. Going back a little bit to slide 9, when we ask our city staff focus group about program needs, one of the things that stood out to me is safety. When they say safety, are we talking about safety programs, or they would like more safety and security when hosting programs? What's the thought process for that?
Okay, so as a park and rec professional, our number one priority is safety. So safety is lighting, making sure that our parking lots are well lit, that safety mechanisms, more additional cameras is something that came up. And so overall, ensuring that our participants feel welcomed in the spaces that they're recreating in. So that's really the dimension that they were put that category in.
Thank you for that clarification. I really appreciate that because it's been something that I think is shared across different departments in the city. A lot of our staff are asking for more things like cameras, more safety resources, especially in a changing environment. So I really hope we can definitely prioritize that because that is first and foremost. It's also one of the thankfully easier things to get a head start on than some of our 50K projects in here. So I really appreciate that. Let's see. Where we see areas, I'm just curious, where we see areas of safety, cleanliness, maintenance, shared as issues throughout the report and throughout the presentation, are we seeing this throughout all of our park facilities, or did folks mention kind of specific locations where the recurring themes, any consistency there?
Yeah, so a big recurring theme, which is why we made a budget request for, our bathrooms are open to the public, 12 to 16 hours a day, our public restrooms. And so they need a little bit more attention, midday cleaning, deep cleaning. So we came back and asked for a budget request to augment that contract, and we're going to be implementing that very, very soon. Additionally, we saw, in our ball fields, we have beautiful bleachers, we have shade structures, and people just love to participate. Right, so we've implemented deep cleaning of those bleachers, and have a contractor deployed to clean them periodically. So as we hear what the needs of the communities are through programs, through these master plans, then we quickly come back and ask for those dollars to implement some change.
Great, thank you. And was there any one specific site or place that had more challenges than another?
So our regional parks generally have the bigger challenges. The Olive, the McCambridge, the larger park, Foy Park is also one that, it's a larger park with large thoroughfares going through them and more traffic throughout the day.
Great, thank you for that. And then my last question is going back to the strategies section where we talk about the dollars. I noticed that in that chart, some of the costs in the chart in Exhibit 4.2 are on school sites. Mm-hmm. How are we working with the district to find those funds and just partner in that?
So we do have a joint use committee, and we pay into the district for use of their campuses, and then part of that is a capital payment, and then the district sets those funds aside, and as a joint use committee, we prioritize projects to use those funds. So we would be taking this back to the district and looking at projects where we can make some improvements. Something to note, just even last week, the Burbank Tennis Center through joint use dollars had all of their windscreens replaced. So those are projects and programs that we work closely with the district to move forward.
Great, thank you. It's wonderful to hear that, Councilor Mullins. I also saw the 154 million and had a mini heart attack, but it's good to know that we already have some sources of funding there, so not to fear. And I'm sure our staff is great at looking for those grants. They do like to be number one.
We do like to be number one.
All right, thank you so much for that. My only other suggestion before I forget, because we did mention the school district, is when we do share it with them, I'd love to hear their feedback as well in general for the plan. They know one of our top consumers of parks are children, so we'd really appreciate to hear their thoughts. Colleagues, any last thoughts, final comments? No? Thank you both so much for the presentation, and we appreciate hearing about it. Thank you. All righty, it is now 6:02 p.m. We will take a 10-minute recess. I would like to see everybody back here at 6:12 to start our regular council meeting.